Welcome back, everybody. Of course, my name is Mike, and I just want to welcome everybody back to another episode of Talkin' Stitches. Joe, I got to tell you, every time I hear that theme song, I like it a little bit more. What a nice little ditty. Of course, I'm sitting here talking to Joe. I'm joined here in the studio with our keyboard commenter extraordinaire, Joe. So thanks again for joining us. But that's not all, guys. Just a little bit of background here. We're recording a little bit early, so if it sounds like we don't know what we're doing, that's probably why. But we're joined here also with Donelle McAdams, a very, very talented educator. Joe, let's get her in here real quick. There she is. Well, there's her machine. Hi, Donelle.
Hey, how are you?
I am, you know what? I'm doing really well. I tell you, like we were talking just a little bit ago. Boy, it sure feels like sometimes we just run down a million different rabbit holes, but we're just glad to be able to be doing this with you this week.
Always fun. I've got a lot of fun things to share today, too.
I tell you what, and I tell you, it feels like we are just not prepared, and that's on us, not you. So we got a couple of things to get out of the way here before we get started, guys. So we're going to just kind of walk you through that real quick. As far as registration goes, we don't require registration for our shows. The only time that you would ever need to register is if you actually wanted to purchase something, and that would be right there on SoForLess.com. If you're just here for the education, sit back, relax, take it all in. Donelle is an amazing educator. You guys are in for a treat. We get the question all the time, where can I watch the show? Well, when we switched over to our new format, that means that you can watch this show in a lot of different places, one of which being SoForLess.com. That's actually the easiest place to watch our shows on Friday, is right there on the website on SoForLess.com. You'll find that link on the top of every single page, so it's really easy to get to. But if you prefer YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, even Twitch, the video game, yeah, we're all over the place. So guys, wherever your favorite format, you can find us. But again, the easiest way to find it is right there on SoForLess.com, which actually brings us to our next point, because undoubtedly something happens and you'll navigate away from the show. Well, the easiest way to get back there is to just head over to the SoForLess.com website. As I mentioned, that link is right there on the top of every single page, and it'll take you right back to the show. So again, life happens, your dog barks, something happens, you spill your drink, whatever it is, and you end up away from it. So just head right back to SoForLess.com. That link is right there on the top. So what is so special about live shows? Well, I'm glad you asked. One of the things that we love about it is that unique interaction. Of course, here I'm saying that, and we're actually pre-recording this one, but don't worry, guys. We're going to still be in there in the comments helping you guys out. But that is the fun of live shows, is that the interaction that we get right there with all of you guys in the comments. So please, comment away. Let us know where you're watching it. That's always kind of fun to see just how far we can pull. Guys, one of the things we offer right there on the website, right on SoForLess.com, is custom embroidery designs. It's a unique way to memorialize things. If you've got kid drawings, you see right here behind me, I've got a couple of artists that live with me. It's a fun way to take artwork. What have we seen, Joe? We talk about this, right? Like poems, things from mom and dad, from weddings, cocktail napkins, right, that kind of stuff.
School art.
Yeah, well, a lot of school art. I mean, you can basically take all of that stuff and convert it over to embroidery designs. And the cool thing about it is that we just lowered the price of all the custom digitizing on the website. So anything that's under 5 inches by 5 inches, you can get digitized for just $10. Super easy. It goes up incrementally, but not very much. It's actually very, very affordable. And you don't have to wait for a quote anymore. It is completely instantaneous. So you'll know exactly how much it's going to cost right before you hit submit. So it is a fun service. We see a lot of stuff, even old time photographs, stuff people are going through, old family albums and stuff like that. So it is kind of fun. But if you haven't checked it out, it's definitely worth looking at. We don't have any show and tell. Guys, I'm going to tell you, get on one of our groups. And if you want to share what you're working on, we'll feature it right here on the show. But we don't have anything to feature this week. But I got nothing else. If you're ready, I'm ready. Joe, are you ready to go?
Yeah.
Let's get Donelle up there. I am ready to dive into this table runner. Donelle, let's get to it.
All right. Well, as I said, I'm excited to be here with you guys today. We're going to I'm going to show you a little bit of stitching here first, and then we're going to talk about why this says 4x4 with options. And so we're going to go ahead and we're going to create a 2 block instead of a 4. You see it has 4 here. And you can do just 1, you can do 4, you can do 12. I had a lady once that said she had a large family and she did do 10 of these. So rather than just having 4, she did 10 of these squares to make it that long for her huge table. So I've gone ahead and I've set my machine for the 1/4 of an inch. Now, some of you will probably look at that and go, that's not your 1/4 of an inch foot. No, you're correct. It is not my 1/4 of an inch foot, but I like to have all of this sitting right on there to work with. So I am going to set my machine so that the needle moves over to the right, and I'm going to be able to guide right here to get my 1/4 of an inch. Now, this is my glider. I leave it on all the time. And you'll notice that this is the ruler work glider, but I have cut it out larger. And so you can do that if you want. Now I'm just using a, in piecing, I like to use a 60 weight thread. So I am using a 60 weight cotton thread. You can use 40, that's not a problem. If you're going to do ruler work that is going to go over the, stitching lines, seam lines, whatever, then you really want to piece with 60 weight thread. And that's why I'm piecing with 60 weight thread today. Now, when you purchase the pattern, and I know Mike's got all of these things available right there on your sales sheet, but when you purchase the pattern, it's going to give you the measurements that you need for everything. Now, what I'm using here is a pre-printed block. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be putting the squares that it has you cut, I have sliced on the diagonal. And I'm going to be taking this and putting one on each opposite side. Now, no matter whether you're using a pre-print like I've got right here, or if you're using, I'm going to give you a lot of options here in just a little bit. But no matter what you're using, if you will put this point in the center of your block. So what we're going to do is we've already got those cut to the width that it told us. And we're just going to center that. Now you can see I can center that right here very easily. If you can't tell where that center is, then all you need to do is, one of the things that many of you probably have already purchased is one of my centering rulers, and you can just take that and go from side to side. So like this is 3 1/4 here and it's 3 1/4 there. So we know that that's the center. So that centering ruler really helps out in that situation. So now all I'm going to do over here is I have adjusted my stitch length. When I select a 1/4 of an inch stitch, it always puts it down to 1.8. And I don't like it quite that small. So we're going to go ahead and adjust that. And we're going to stitch our 1/4 of an inch seam here. And because I know that I'm going to be doing some probably template quilting on mine, I may be drawing some lines on my fabric. So the right sides of these I have already pressed with either Best Press. I like to use Starch Savvy, one of those that will allow me to use my Frixon markers, and then it will just iron off. Now, when I've got this one here, I can take this across and see that I've got it centered. These are larger because we are going to be floating that center square. Whoa, what was that? Oh, it looks like my little friend, the kitty, just put her finger into the fray. So hang on here just a second. Always nice to have those mistakes right on screen, because you know you have them now and then, and now you know, yeah, guess what? I have them too. So let's see what we can do here. We're going to pull that out.
You know, I'm really glad that you said that, because, you know, one of the things that I do really love about these live shows, Donelle, is that
it happens.
Mistakes do happen, and I got to tell you, everybody that's watching loves to see them happen to you because it makes everybody feel so much better about themselves.
I know. And it's one of those things that you can't really control. And I said, I remember back when I would tape shows, and the thing that was always interesting is then we go back and edit and work and work and work to try and make it look like, that we didn't have any issues. And now we're also used to doing virtual, that it's just like, just go ahead and do it. It's going to happen. It will happen. And we might as well face it. So it's just the way it goes. So let's get it threaded here and go again. I have little helpers that sometimes like to tangle up my threads, and obviously that's what happened. Fortunately, when you have a situation like that, it usually allows you to catch it before it becomes a real big mess. And since it was right there, I'm going to go ahead and just overlap. I'm not going to back stitch. So we'll overlap those stitches. And I'm just going to do what we call unit sewing or speed piecing or flash feeding. Everybody's got their names for it. I always called it unit sewing because that was back when I was doing a lot of garment things, and it wasn't always just seams. So we're just going to line that up, start that in there. And since we're only doing 2 blocks, just go ahead and cut this and turn this one around. And then we'll lay this one on so we got it in the center. And we want to make sure we get that, right dead center, because as I said, this is going to float. The inside is going to float. It's not going to be so that the corners come right up to where my border is going to be. Now, before we move on, we need to press these. And I know that Mike has those great wool pressing mats. And so I've got one right here beside me. And I'll tell you what, if you've never used a wool pressing mat, you're really missing out on a nice crisp seam. So I'm going to take the time to pull it right up here so that you can see it. It just makes it so much easier to do your pressing because the fact that that mat just works right with you. Now, one of the things that I like to do before I actually press a seam, either open or to one side, is I like to press it just like it came off of the machine. And you see how nice and flat that lays. And I'm using a little iron. I think they're called Mighty. I'm not sure. They're by Dritz. And I know that Mike has those. And I'm going to press my seams. In this case, I'm going to press them out away. So I'm just going to come to the right side here and press that back. And I'm going to press this one back. I'll flip this around, press that. And because of that wool mat, it's just so perfect. It just lays great. And you can see how nice and flat that is there. So there's one of them. We'll come back here and get the other one. And press to the outer edge. Now, you can press it to the inside so you don't see that shadowing there. But I know what I'm going to be doing regarding some quilting. And I'm going to be doing some echoing in there, and it's not ever going to show. So we've got those laid out, and you can see that this is quite a bit more than 1/4 of an inch. So that's why I say it's so important to get this centered, because when we do this, this is not going to finish right at that corner when it goes into with the actual borders, because it's going to float. So you're going to have what we call a floating square. And you'll see here in just a second what I mean. So let's get some more of our half square triangles here. It's going to come right up to here. Super important to get it right in that middle. And when you start to stitch, if your machine is one of those that kind of helps itself to a bigger bite and takes it down into the needle plate, you may want to use what's called a starting block. And a starting block is usually something that you retrieve from the trash. I mean, that's what I'm doing right now. And I'm just going down here and getting myself a piece of fabric. And truly, it is from the trash. And I've got about a 2-inch square of fabric here. And what I would do is I would just double this over, and I would stitch on this first, and then I would stitch on that. So let me just show you. Let's go ahead and stitch a little bit here. I guess I am off my fabric. We'll pull this out, and on the next one, I'll show you what I'm doing. So I'm just stitching on the fabric to hold it in place. And that way, those stitches are already convinced what they're supposed to do. So they're not going to take a big old bite out of your fabric. So I'm going to lay this in place, and I'm going to begin stitching here. And even though there was a couple of stitches on air because of the way these triangles met, you notice that I didn't have any issues with it. So if your machine happens to be one of those that can kind of, like I said, take a bite out of it, just start with a little starting block. And then you would just do the same thing again. You would get ready to stitch, come to that end. I'm going to turn this around, get my other piece ready, finding that center spot right over here. And of course, you could mark those before you began each of your squares. You could actually mark that. But we want to get that right in the right place because it makes a difference when it comes down here. Even though we're going to square up this block after we press it, it does make a difference. Okay, so that one's ready to be pressed. We'll show you that here in a second. Let's take this one. I think it's always interesting when we're doing different projects like this, the little hints and tips that you learn along the way as you become more and more involved with any kind of quilting. And one of the things is just something as simple as finding the center of that and how to go about it. So here again, I know you're kind of close there. Let me pull it over here a little bit. We're just going to press that. And because that's bias, you want to make sure you're not stretching anything. And you see right there, we have this square. Oh, sorry, I'll get it over there a little bit more. There we go. We have this square floating in this bigger square. So it's not like this corner here comes right up so that you just have a 1/4 of an inch. So that's what we mean by floating. And it's a really cool look for a lot of different things. And you'll see why when I start showing you the samples of all of your different options. Now you can see we've got these little dog ears here. We're going to clean that up and clip those off. This is one of those projects that honestly, it's very easy and fast. It can be very involved also, because when I show you the samples, you're going to see that some of them involve embroidery and some other things too. So that's why I wanted to show you the construction part first. And then you can see how versatile and how quick this project can be for making it for gifts or a housewarming or whatever. So let's lay that over to the side, and I'm going to get a cutting mat here. And we're just going to kind of use that as far as it doesn't necessarily have to be one that has the squares in it, but we're just using the lines to get things lined up. So then I can go ahead and trim this. Now I know that I want this to be 9 1/4. So I'm going to trim off that side. And then let's go around this way and see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. If I put that here, I'm going to get you guys up a little bit so you can see better here. There we go. So if I put that over here on this side on the 9, got to move it just a little bit on you. Probably most of you are like me, you're better when you're standing up doing your cutting. And that's the case with me too. So let's see here. Yep, we need to trim just a little bit more off of this side. So we're leaving about a 1/2 inch on all 4 sides, out beyond where the stitching is. So from right there, we're going about a 1/2 inch from that point. So I'm going to put it right here. And then make sure that you flip it around the correct way so that you're cutting off what you intend to cut off. All righty, so we've got 1 square ready to go. When we seam it, that 1/4 inch is going to be there, so that will still be floating. And let's get the other one ready to go. Now, if you have, sorry about that, if you have square up rulers, ones that actually, have the dimensions, and you can use a square up ruler just as easily as the straight edge. The one thing I like about using this centering ruler is it does have all of those marks over here, so you can see your 1/4 inch. So I'm putting it right there and making it straight at the bottom. Pressing is important. Cutting is important. Every step of the process of making a quilt is definitely what creates the exactness when you're putting it together. So that's why anything that you have, obviously when I was talking about the wool mat, because it gives you a better, crisper seam, that's going to be a definite advantage to you. Just like putting some sort of a starch or starch alternative onto your fabric even before you stitch anything. It makes it so much firmer. It's so much more you are in control. So let's see how well we've done here, because we are going to be putting these 2 blocks together. And so what we're going to do, you can see right here, my difference is this right this way and that's that way. But I don't want to have these 2 together. Maybe you might want, well, it's not going to matter. Guess what? Look, it's right over here too. And it's right over here. So we're just going to be putting this together. I'm going to push that out that way and bring you all back in here. And what I want to do is make sure that when I put these edges together that I have no stretching in there. I don't want anything to stretch. So you'll notice here it's just not right together. I want to get that right together. If you want to pen it, definitely do that. But I encourage you to use some really nice sharp pens. Don't use those really heavy ones because they leave big holes in your fabric. So now as we come through there, we have a decision to make. Do we want to cut these so that they are, or excuse me, press these so that this is open, or press it to one side? Well, honestly, in this situation, I believe I'm going to press it open. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a couple of things here that make that super, super easy. And one of them, first of all, is to do the same thing I showed you a while ago. And that's to press this, not necessarily iron. You don't need to iron, but you can press up and down with that. Press that before. And then I've shown you this before. You may already have some. If not, you would love it. And that's what's called the Stitchy Sticks by the Gypsy Quilter. And they come in this package, and each end has a tool on it. And this part is squared, so it won't roll off of your table. And the part that I'm going to use right now is like, it looks almost like a golf club down here. But you see that little flat part? It just makes it so easy to get this started by pressing it with that to get that good and flat to keep it open so you can get going. And I'm going to go up here just a little bit past that center spot. This is laying open down here. So I can now just take my iron and again, go right in there. And then I'm going to turn it around and come from this other end. So let me just get my iron over there. So I'm just going to come from this end, and it keeps this from, you know, really getting stretched and distorted by being able to just flatten that out there. You may have a different kind of tool. If you don't have anything, I would recommend you get these, because this at the other end is a pointer for a stylist. And one of the ends is like a little spatula. And this little spatula type, you probably saw me when I was doing appliques. This allows you to pick that applique off of your pressing sheet. And I got a little hint for you today about applique. So I'm going to show you that here in just a bit. So we now have our two blocks put together, and we're going to add a border on either side. So what I want to do here is I want to measure what that border needs to be. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to get a ruler that's long enough. You probably have several of those around. And I am just going to lay that on there so that I can measure. And this comes up to 18 1/4. And so I have my border cut. So I'm going to measure it so it's exact. You really don't ever want to get into the practice of just starting to stitch and then cutting it off wherever it ends, because that will cause a wavy border that you're going to have issues with if you're trying to quilt it, especially because it's going to be waving and it's not going to lay flat and all kinds of things. Now you're probably wondering, so how's she going to do this on this mat where it's not even 18 inches? Well, I'm going to show you. So this is 10 from there to there. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to, and I'm cutting 2 layers at a time here. I'm just going to mark my 10. And then I'm going to come over here and know that I need 8.5. So right there is the half. And right here, just so you know, is the 8. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So 18. Did I say a half? I need a quarter. There we go. 18.25. Boy, that would have fussed me. So now I have both of my borders cut the correct length. I see a little spot on one of them that needs a little press. And now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get that out of the way. I'm going to take my edge here. If you have direction to your border or whatever, you will need to, deal with that. But you can see that laid right on there and right even up there. And so I'm going to put a couple of pins in just because I don't want to stretch or move it in any way. And it's really important, no matter what size project you're working on, quilts, wall hanging, whatever, it's very, very important to measure those borders, not just start stitching. And what I do on a large quilt is I never measure the edge. You measure through the center. So like if this was a large quilt, I would have measured through the center, not on the edge, because the edge can tend to stretch out of shape or at least be larger when you're measuring it because it doesn't have much stitching in it. So it's always a good idea to measure through the middle. So we're going to flip this around. We're going to check this one, put it right down there on the edge. Perfect. And again, I'm going to put like 3 pins in this. I used to teach middle school, and the kids, they learned quickly because I always said, pin what you know matches first, and then work in between the pins. And that's truly what you need to do because you've got spots, whether you're working with a project of a bag or, whatever it is, you're going to have places that have to match, and then you work in between those. Now you'll notice on that, and I'll show you when we get finished here, that there was a little place that was sticking out. I don't know if I just didn't get it cut or it truly was longer, but it would have caused me a problem had I put my pink right up there against it. So that's not going to be a big deal. It's just a little bit longer, but it obviously needed to be that way so everything would press just right. So I'm just going to leave my pressing mat over here and press real quickly so that we can then add the ends to this. Now you notice that we've not done anything very difficult so far, and it's going together rather quickly. And those were all measurements and things that were listed in the pattern. And as I told you, you can use as many of those as you want, whether it's 2 or more. I am going to press this out to the border. So I've already pressed it the way it came off of the machine, off of the sewing machine. And then I'm going to press it out towards the border. And on the end, it is a square that is cut in half. So it's a big half square triangle in this case. And it's going to go across that end. it's so much fun to take fabrics and create with them and, you know, use a different pattern in maybe a different way. And that's why when I designed this pattern, I called it with options, because I knew there was going to be a lot of different things that you could do with this particular pattern. And I want to show you here, you notice that this is the one I pressed open. That just kind of balances the whole thing out. Now, when I put batting underneath there, you're probably not even going to see that. You're probably going to be, you know, it's going to lose everything because of that batting being underneath there. Now, this is kind of an eggshell color. It's not white. So I can use either a white or a natural colored batting. But if this was white, you don't want to use a natural batting. You want to use a white batting, because otherwise it just kind of dulls down your color. Now this is my triangle here, or my square. It's going to be a half square triangle. So I'm going to put this on here. And I've got a longer ruler so that I can measure that and get that right through that center. I very seldom cut going towards me. It's just that that's kind of easier for what I'm doing right now. I would not recommend it. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the same technique that I did earlier. And that is take that triangle, which is going to be your end down here, and I'm going to turn it. It'll even be easier this time because I want to line it up here with the center. So once I get that lined up with the center, I'm going to come over here to the side and pull it in so it's right on that edge. Make sure I don't move anything off of the center. We'll put a couple of pins in here. Now, I'm not afraid to show my mistakes when it happens. Obviously, you guys saw what happened when we first started stitching. But right down here, when I went towards me, see what happened? So what I'm doing is I'm leaving that there to allow that space, because I don't want to take this and make it out there. That would make my 1/4 of an inch off. So I'm just going to go ahead and do my 1/4 of an inch here. I never sew over pins, nor do I recommend that you sew over pins. Sew up to them, but not over them. And then we're going to turn this around, repeat that same process. Getting that right in the center. Now, when you're finished with this step, we're going to press those seams out. I'm going to press them towards the triangle, and then we will even it up by cutting. I think I'm going to have to get a bigger one of your mats, Mike. I'm kind of outgrowing my smaller one.
Well, I can help you with that.
I know.
You know, I got to tell you, I've gotten so many, not just from consumers, but a lot of educators have contacted me and told me that not only have they used other wool mats in the past, they really, really like ours better. Now, and I know I'm biased, but that is completely unsolicited testimonials from educators just like yourself. And I've heard you time and time, and thank you for all of the kind words, but they have really gone over well.
Yeah, the wool mats, I kind of originally, and this is just factual, originally I was kind of like, oh, yeah, wool mat, nice, whatever, big deal. And then I started consistently using it. And I can tell you that these just lay nice. I mean, that's all I can say is you just get such a firm, crisp. And the whole idea is because I don't know how many people know how a wool mat is made, but it's a felting process where you're taking that, you're shrinking all that wool and pressing it all together. Well, if you think about why a sheep has wool and what it does for him or her, then you know the whole concept of it is the fact that it's very compressed, and it just allows that heat to just penetrate through your fabric, and just it's like pressing from both sides is basically the best way to say it. It's just like pressing from both sides. So it's really a great thing. So this right here, our triangle, this is where we would then even things up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my, because you can see it sticks off on this side and probably on the other side too. I'm going to get my cutting mat, and I'm going to take that and just simply lay it on here. And you can use whatever square up you might have. Now, believe it or not, I'm going to use my crosshair square from my quilting. So this is my template quilting crosshair square. And all I need to do is get it to line up on this corner and that corner. And when I work with that, I am making sure that down here in the middle, let me get one that's, there we go. Let's go one that's straight up. That this straight up is right here still in my center. Well, I can't do it with this. Let me get the 8-point. Yeah, this 5-point will work. No, it won't, Donelle. Gotta have the 8-point. Well, I turn around and my project is on the floor. Here we go. Now you're going to be taking this and you're going to be going to your cutting table, and it's going to be a whole lot easier, but I wanted you to see how this works rather than me just going and doing it. So right through here is right through the center. And you can see this is going right down there. And there's more over here than there is over there. So I want to get this so that that's lined up. And that's lined up. And then we're going to cut this. And then I'm simply going to turn this so it's easier for me. And I'm simply going to line this up on this side so that it goes right down to that point.
You know, I think I speak for everybody that's watching, is that you sure do make this look easy. I mean, I know that you're working with a camera right there and up close, and you're still knocking out all of these nice square cuts.
Well, you know, that's one of the things that's important. And that's why I said a while ago, it's the little things that will make your project, you know, just go from good to great, I guess is the best way to say it. And that's one of the things that I always try to make sure that I show the techniques that are going to help and make that easy because, you know, I hate to say it, but there's a lot of math, there's a lot of thinking, there's a lot of numbers, but we don't have to make it so it's difficult because I know a lot of times when I mention something, that's why I designed that centering ruler, because whenever I would say, what's half of 8 1/4 or whatever, and it's like, oh no, she's making us think. And so when you have it so that it's already prepared, it does make it a whole lot easier. So we have actually now finished here the 2 section. Like I said, this could have as many sections as you want. And I have already put my batting and backing together. I'm a spray girl, so I've already sprayed this. And so I've got my batting, and we're going to put this on top, but I want to make sure I leave enough because on this particular project, we can use the Quick Easy miter binding tool and the dual angle miter binding tool, because that corner down here, that's a right angle. So that will use the original tool, and then these other angles will use the dual angle tool. So you can use those to create those sections. Now, I'm not sure I'm going to get far enough into this to show that, but it's the same concept as the other tools. So this is all laid out now, and it's small enough, and that batting just kind of hugs it anyway, that I really don't need to spray it. But I want to do some quilting on this for you. So the first thing I'm going to do down here at the other end, I've got about 1 foot too much of fabric, so I'm just going to cut that off with my fabric scissors that are nice and sharp.
Donna, I just wanted to jump in here for just a second here, and I wanted to invite everybody, if you have not already seen the show we did with Donelle, where she actually demonstrated all of those tools that she was mentioning, I'd like to ask you to go ahead, head into the Talkin Stitches category on the website and find that show. It's actually the very first one that we did. And she shows you how to use every single one of those tools. There's quite a few of them, and it is something to see. It's very impressive, and it makes it very easy to do your binding in borders. I was thoroughly impressed, and I know you will be as well. So if you wanted to see those tools that Donelle was just talking about in action, check that out. It's under the Talkin Stitches category. It is the very first one. You'll have to scroll down a little bit, but you can see her use all of those tools that she created to make your binding and borders that much easier.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Mike, because that's what I was going to say too. Go back and take a look at that, because you're going to be shocked at how easy you can bring the back to the front and make your border just really very, very easy. So when this is finished, I will be cutting off my batting up next to this edge, and then I'll leave 1.5 inches out here. And then from there, you can watch that video or the show. And I want to say it's like the 1st of April, somewhere back in then, because it was the very first show. So you can watch that and you can see how to use that dual angle tool. And I think you're really going to love it. So what I'm going to do here is I am going to do a little bit of quilting on this, and then I'm going to show you some extra projects. So the template that I'm going to use today is called the 2x3, I got to turn it the right way, continuous border loop. The 2x3 continuous border loop. So what I'm going to do is, because I know what's going to happen out here or what I can do with that, I'm going to now tell you that I'm going to leave an extra 1/2 inch out here. So when I turn it over, only 1/4 of an inch of this will be taken up. So that way I can use more of my template here. So when I do this design, right here is my seam. I'm going to put it over so that this little line right there, I think you can see it, that line right there lines up with that seam. And then I'm going to bring this down so that this line or the bottom lines up with that. So I've got this lined up, that lined up. And now when I do this design, it's going to go from there to down here, and I'll be able to do this continuous loop across there. Now I've already set my machine up. While Mike was talking there a little bit, I just changed the foot and changed the settings so that I'm ready for ruler work. And that's the reason I went ahead and left my mat on while I was working, because I don't even have to now worry about changing to that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come right down here at the bottom and put my needle in, and I'm going to bring that thread up. I've got my bobbin thread up to the top, and now I'm simply going to go around and back to the bottom. Now, those of you that have done template quilting before, this is one of those that is super, super easy to do. Get you a little bit more in the driver's seat, because I know when I'm looking at this stuff, I want to see exactly what's happening. So now, all I need to do, watch how hard this is, come across and go like that. And all I need to do is line up. There's an etching right here. I think you can see the very tail end of it that lays on top of what I just stitched. It's right down here also. So once I've got that laid out on what I just stitched, here we go again. And we stop. We'll get my threads out of the way. I'm going to line up right here, right on top of what I just stitched. I love this border, and I love how easy it is to use. I got to do a few more so that you'll be able to see what it looks like. It's always funny. First of all, I have to tell you, I am not a free motion quilter. But if I ever tried it, I always tried to match my threads so much that nobody could see it, because my free motion quilting was so bad. Well, now it's like template quilting is like using training wheels. It's so easy that you want your stitches to show. So you want to get a thread that's compatible. I'm just using a ecru colored, almost the same color as this, 40 weight quilting thread. And I just want you to see how this matches up right there each time. And it's simply because of the fact that I'm lining up that little etching with each time that I'm going. Keeping that flat out. My goodness, I'm almost finished with this first row. And I know some of you are out there already saying, I wonder what she's going to do in the corners. Me too. I haven't got a clue. Not at this point.
You know, I have to tell you, of course, we've been doing shows on Tuesdays dedicated solely to ruler work quilting, and I never get tired of watching it being sewed out. There's something about the repetitiveness. It's almost hypnotic.
Exactly. Mesmerizing.
Exactly. Mesmerizing is a great word to describe it. But for any of our viewers that are unfamiliar, I do want to invite you to join us on Tuesdays with the So Show. It's dedicated entirely to ruler work quilting, and it really is quite easy. Of course, Donell makes everything look easy, but it's a lot easier than you would think. And you should definitely check out some of those tutorials. But I'm going to turn it back over to you, Donell.
That's okay, because Mike, I'm just kind of looking at this thinking, what am I going to do next? I don't know for sure. But that other one started 1/4 of an inch from here. And no, it started right in that seam line. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to turn this a little bit so that it will end pretty much the same way as the other one. So I want to, yeah, that's pretty much what it is. So I'm just going to stop there, and I'm going to bring my, and you notice I just turned my template a little bit so that it pretty much mirrors the other end. It's not always that easy. I've been using this template for a little bit, so I kind of have figured out what I can and can't do with it. I want to leave it long enough. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull that thread up, and I'm going to take a self-threading needle. I'm just going to get a hold of that bobbin thread and bring it up. And I know this is going to get covered up with my binding here, but I'm still going to go ahead and tie it. And I'm just going to take that loop around. And then before I pull it down tight, I'm going to put the point of my needle through the loop and right back down in that spot. And because I know it's going to be in the binding, I really don't have to bury it. But since some of you may not have seen that, this is a self-threading needle. And all I'm going to do is take it and go underneath my batting and bury that thread. And you can see that knot's already pulled through. I thought I was going to do it slow enough, but the knot's already pulled through and buried in there. So pretty simple, pretty easy. And I'll just cut that thread right off. I'll do the same thing with the other ones. So if you didn't catch that knotting, maybe you'll catch it this time. They're already both up there. We're just going through, make a loop. And then we're going to take this and go right back down in there and thread that self-threading needle with our pull that through. And then you might be able to see that knot, but not now. It's popped right in there. So,
I just want to pop in real quick here because I want to make mention of the way that you ended that border. All too often, especially when we're showing off our own projects, we have a tendency of trying to point out all of the things that may not have been 100% correct or 100% evenly spaced. And I just want to remind you guys that, first of all, chances are 99% of the people that look at your projects will never notice anything or even any inconsistencies until you point them out. So don't worry about it. Don't stress yourself out over those little things like that. Of course, Donell was just showing you and was explaining the process of how you can kind of game that dimension there.
yeah.
But you don't have to mention any of that stuff. Nobody's ever going to give yourself a break. Your creations look great. Don't take the time to point out the little things like that.
You're absolutely right, Mike. I can remember back in the day, I would take bus trips with my customers, and we would go for like a 2-day event. And so we always had fun planned on the bus. And part of that fun was show and tell. And it was always, it was like, how long into their 2-minute talk about their project will it be before they show us what they did wrong? Because that's what everybody seems to point out. And you don't need to do that, because most likely no one's going to. I always joked, I said, the only person that's going to point that out is your sister-in-law that doesn't sew. Jokingly, that's the way I always thought of it. But, don't point out those mistakes. I'm going to turn it over so you can see the back side too. I guess I need to pull that back here, but that is such an easy border to do. It's such an easy border to line up. If you've not joined us on the sew shows on Tuesday, get on there. We got a lot of educators showing a lot of stuff, and it will help you to decide, maybe I want to get into that. I can tell you, I held back and I held back and I held back because I wasn't a free motioner. And once I gave it a shot, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so easy. It's going to be something that's going to take a little bit of time, but you know, once you get going on it, everything is very, very easy to work out. So I'm going to show you some extra samples here. So let me take this off and pick those up, and I'll get that, get showing you some of the other options. So Mike, if you got anything to say right now, would be a good time to do it.
Well, and so one of the things, I'm going to do another plug here. Let me kind of see if I lost Joe here. So now I'm kind of flying solo here. I'm going to see if I can do this right here. There we go. Look at me. I'm back in here. So guys, what Donelle was saying is that, you know, it looks a lot more daunting than it really is. Stacy with Sew Study has really done, and not just her, the entire Sew Study company, as far as designing all of these rulers to make it almost, dare I say, dummy proof. They're all marked, and it makes it very easy to create very complex designs. Diane is one of our educators, and she's the master of planning a lot of this stuff out beforehand. And you can see just the beautiful quilt blocks that you can create. And if you haven't already, you can always check out Sew Study University. There's over 20 courses at last count. I counted 22 different courses. So if you are interested in any kind of ruler work, those 22 courses that I was referencing are completely free, absolutely free. You can follow along, you can pause the videos, there's handouts, all of the different stuff that you would need. The only thing that you would need to purchase is if you wanted to get the rulers to actually give it a go, which I think you'll find are very reasonable. It spans the whole gamut. You can buy just one, you can buy a whole complete set if you wanted to go all gung-ho. But there's so much free ruler work education that's available. And again, like Donelle was saying, please join us on Tuesdays. You'll be really surprised at what you can do. And a lot of our classes are kind of outside of the box thinking. I think 2 weeks ago, we did a jelly roll tote bag. I mean, just all kinds of different things that you can do with your ruler work. And you can put your templates to use in other ways, which is really kind of fun. And it's exciting to me because I love it when we can show you guys different ways to get more bang for your buck. Because I know this stuff does cost a fair amount of money, and you could be spending that money somewhere else. So anytime that we can kind of get those juices flowing, get the creative ideas going, you can use it for other things. And, you know, stuff like the jelly rolls, and you put those scraps to work somewhere else. Of course, we all know that nobody likes to throw away fabric, and it's kind of a fun way to use some of that stash.
All right, I'm back. Are you ready for me to start my show and tell?
Yes, I am. Let me get you back in there. There we go.
All right. So this is the same size as the one we just did, only I pieced my squares in the center. These were two different fabrics rather than the cheater fabric. And you can see how I kind of made this little horizon down here with all of the rays coming out. So that is one that has been template quilted. You can see the miter here on the corners. And as Mike said, you can go back and watch that particular video. And then I want to show you, if you wanted to, in those particular areas, you could applique. So if you're going to applique, and I don't know that I've even shown Mike that I use it this way, but if you have your Sew Study table, and you are going to be doing some applique, and you need to transfer, let's say, some designs onto some sort of a fusible, such as Heat and Bond Light or Simply Fuse or something like that. Mike has this light, okay? And it has a hook with it, but I'm using it differently because when I first got it, I didn't realize exactly what I had because I couldn't figure out it only has a little cable this long. Well, that cable's only to charge it. Okay, so you press the center here and you get this light. So now I can just put that right down underneath there, and it allows me to see through that paper with that light under there. So you can see that it's a whole lot easier to be able to do those appliques or those transfers that you're going to use for the appliques. So that's just a neat little idea. Now the light can be put anywhere on your sewing machine, and it has different brightnesses. You probably can tell that's a little bit of a warmer color there. And that's even warmer yet. It looks kind of funny on the screen, but it doesn't look quite that way to me. But this is going to be something that you can use to just slip underneath there. It's LED. It's not going to get hot. I had a lady once bring in her table. She put a regular light bulb under this and warped that table like you wouldn't believe. But these are LEDs. And with that comes a charging cable that will charge it. It looks like this. That's why I said, it's just a short little cable. What in the world am I going to hook that to? But then it also comes with some tape. So if you wanted to actually tape that to your sewing machine, when I say tape, it's like a double-sided sticky thing that you can put right in underneath. A lot of the sewing machines now come with good bright light, but guess what? They don't all come that way. So you may want to get some of that tape and work with it on your machine to make it so it's brighter.
If I could just get you real quick here, that's actually a magnet. And what you do with that is, so what you have there is an add-on. So if you had the Quilter's rear view mirror, you could get that add-on and it uses the same mount that you've already got on your machine. But that strip on there is actually a magnetic strip. And you can put that around the outside of the light bulb, the light there. And that way you've got a place for your pins. You don't have to put it on there. You can use that magnetic tape anywhere. Some people put it on the back of their machine, on the handle, wherever you want. But that's actually a magnet. And on the back there is
I see now.
Yep.
Perfect.
So that's a pin magnet. And so it's designed, that length is designed to go all the way around. There you go. It goes all the way around the light. If you decide, some people don't want to, some people want to use it somewhere else, but it's a little pin catcher.
Cool. All right. Makes sense now. I should read directions, shouldn't I?
We're all guilty of that.
Yeah, well, I usually do. If first you don't succeed, read the directions. Isn't that what it is? Oh, well.
That's what I did.
So I'm going to set that back down in there so everything doesn't fall off. And I'm going to put my mat back underneath here, if I can get it to roll. I'll just take it off. So now I want to show you, I use the same pattern, and instead of squares, I just use one whole piece down the center. So you can see it's the same way at the end, one piece down the center, and I have used my quilting in there. So it's kind of a way to showcase, easy to put it on. You saw how easy that was to do. And that is one way. So that's one option. Another option is to do what we call fussy cut or panel prints. And so I had some prints here that I fussy cut out of the fabric. And then I put a border around each one of them to make that the square. Another fun thing is after you've turned in your binding, before you stitch it down, you can just stick some rickrack or some sort of decorative trim in there. And you can see on this one, like I said, I just fussy cut some things out of the fabric. You could, as I said, you could do applique. Now this is one that I really wanted to show you today, but I could not find my, I call it Shrinky Dink, but that's not what it's called. It's either Texture Magic or Stitch and Steam. There's a bunch of different names, but that's the way this is created. And if I hold it up this way, I think you can see it's dimensional. So I took this square of fabric, and it was probably about 15 inches square. And I put a piece of that Texture Magic or the Stitch and Steam and whatever on the back of it. And then I just did random stitching. You could do free motion stitching. You could do a decorative stitch. You're just going to stitch all over it. And then once you put the iron to it, you put the iron to the back side and you hold it about an inch above and you press the sting button and it shrinks all up. And that is, you can see the texturing there, how it's just texturized. This is a cool way to add something different to whether it's a project like this, or maybe it's a bag, a purse, you know, any kind of thing that you want to add some creativity with not a lot of work. That's what it is. And I know Mike got several different kinds on there, and I would encourage you to try it. I was so sorry. I was actually out until about 10 minutes before the show trying to find that someplace here local, and I could not find it. And so anyway, that's a lot of fun. And then remember, many of you may have embroidery machines. I did these, and these were just red work done with blue thread. And it's just a lot of fun, not a lot of stitching there, but then those were just highlighted in those squares. And
well, I really like that blue one.
Yeah, that blue work is really pretty on there, real subtle and just really pretty. And you can kind of see that in the background of that, it's kind of a tone on tone. So there's a little bit of a gold radiance type in that. And then last but not least, this is a printed fabric. And all I did was cut it out so it looked like I had done patchwork. And when I stitched it, I stitched through there. So it really now looks like I did patchwork. And again, it's just a matter of being creative with your fabrics. And in that one, I made every single backing square different. So just options, 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 options. So I hope you've enjoyed this today. I encourage you to get the pattern and some of those supplies that I mentioned so that you can do your projects real easy. And, you know, like I said, you don't have to do 4. Maybe you only want to do 2, but it makes for some nice gifts in a fast and easy way. So thanks, Mike, for having me today on your Talking Stitches, and I'm sure we'll meet up again soon.